Okay, well, welcome to Mind Shifting Monday with Mitch. My name is Mitch Weisberg, and I'm your host. Good afternoon for those of you on the East Coast, or most of the U.S. Good evening for those of you who are in Nigeria or Europe. Probably good morning if there's anybody listening um, from Malaysia or Thailand or China. But wherever you are, welcome to Mind Shifting Monday with Mitch. Today we're going to talk about something what I think is incredibly powerful for organizations or families or communities. You know, we have so much conflict going on in our world right now, but we almost never talk about how we respond to conflicts, how we can help each other through them, other ways of getting through conflicts other than arguing or fighting. And of course, that's one of the reasons why I wrote the books and I teach the courses. But I understand that most people in the world are not going to be reading the mind shifting books. Most people in the world are not going to be taking the mind shifting classes. So I wanted to come up with a way that anybody could lead discussions on some of these topics. And so what we decided to do is decided to produce conversation guides. Just think about it. Most people don't have a space to talk honestly about conflict, whether it's at work or at home or with friends. And because of this, progress gets held back. A conversation circle is what I think is a simple 45 to 60-minute guided discussion that creates a safe space for people to explore some pretty tough topics. And one of the most immediate benefits is going to be to foster empathy and share connections. As people feel heard, they realize that they're not the only ones who are struggling. Ultimately, doing this work drives braver, smarter collaboration, pushing everybody in a group or an organization to be more creative and resilient than they could ever be on their own. So, in order to run one of these conversation circles, you don't need to be an expert in conflict resolution. You don't have to have read any books. You don't even need to be great at handling conflict yourself. You just need to be willing to start a conversation with some other people, maybe a personal learning community, maybe a group of fellow teachers or educators, maybe people, maybe your team in your office, maybe your family. And there's going to be a series of guides which we'll present, and I'm going to talk about the first two today. And these are free. They will always be free. You download them and then you use them, and I'll walk you through how you go about doing that. So in each of these guides, everything is built for you in a conversation host playbook. Let's say you're hosting, which isn't the same as teaching; it's just hosting. And to prepare beforehand, just really there's four things to do. Okay, you're going to, have downloaded the guide, but first you'll print or share the concept overview and takeaway handouts for the participants, and I'm going to show you those in a few minutes. You're going to read through the conversation arc once, so you get to know the flow. You're going to pick an icebreaker or two from the guide that feel right for your group, and then think about the conversation and come up with one or two relatable examples or situations that your group might face, and that you're going to help weave those into the discussion. And basically, that's it. The playbook even includes troubleshooting tips for unexpected events that happen, like what to do if the group is quiet, or if one person is doing all the talking, or what if you go on a topic and somebody gets very emotional about the topic. Where do you steer it? There's exact timing and questions plus a closing script. The first one that we're going to be talking about is why we react instead of respond. And let me get the QR code up there. Okay, so this QR code leads to a download screen, so you can download these. But I'm going to show them on my screen also in a minute. So the first one is why we react instead of respond. And we've all done this. I mean, right? We've all shut down completely, or we've gotten loud, or we've just smiled and nodded through something that really bothered us. And then we've all done these other things too. Like we've all tried to coach or teach someone, or we've made a suggestion, and and we're met with like hostility, right? Or avoidance or a complete lack of enthusiasm. This conversation explains why those things happen and what to do about it. Okay. It helps individuals regain control in those tense moments by learning to recognize the physical signals of their fast protective reactor brain. Adults, kids, teachers, coworkers, or family members can utilize a simple 5-second reset to bring their thinking brain back online. This shift restores their ability to listen, to stay curious, and problem solve rather than lashing out or shutting down. So, if you want to build a culture of collaboration and teamwork, understanding these mechanisms is one of the foundational building blocks. And let me just show you how that works by sharing my screen. And so here, and let's see, let me expand that. That's probably too wide, right? Um, Let me see. There's a way of expanding that. I know. Oh, customize. There it is. Okay, so that's about as big as it gets. Okay, so why we react instead of respond? This is the download, and then there's instructions, and I'm hoping that you can see this somewhat, but instructions for the conversation host, and basically it says everything you need to lead a mindset shifting conversation circle is right here. You just need to be willing to start the conversation, and then there's instructions on. Remember, I went over the 4 steps to do before. These are the 4 steps right here. Okay, it goes through the 4 steps, and then the timing at a glance. So welcome and icebreaker is about 5 minutes. Concept overview is about 5 minutes, and then there's 3 phases, which we'll go through in a second, and then there's closing and takeaway. What you're going to be doing for the people who come is you're going to be printing. Let me come down to it right here. Um, a guideline which is going to explain the concepts behind the conversation. So here is it's actually 2 pages. Here's the first page: why we react instead of respond. And let me see if I move that here, then you can probably see it better, even if you can't. Um, Okay, even if you can't see all of the page. So, why react instead of respond? The idea of your survival brain versus your prefrontal cortex. There's what happens in tough conversations and the pause that changes everything. And then the second page that you'll print out for the participants is the takeaways. And here's the takeaways from the conversation. And then let me come down to one the uh, the PDF again, and then once they have the basics, then what you'll do is you'll choose, let's say, a an icebreaker, and there's 3 possible icebreakers here. One is think of a great conversation that didn't go the way you wanted. You don't have to share the details; just describe it in a few words. Or a second icebreaker, when a conversation gets tense, what's your go-to move? Do you get louder, go quiet, change the subject, or just agree to keep the pace? Or really, my favorite is to have the group talk to each other, like ask the group, if you could get a redo on one conversation from the past year, which one would it be, and what would you do differently? And that I think really spurs fantastic conversations. So you go through the icebreaker, that takes a few minutes, and then the conversation itself covers 3 different phases. And I'm going to again expand this, even if it means that you can't see all the way over on the right. But the first part of the conversation is getting people to recognize when these types of things happen in conflicts. So you're gonna, one of the questions is looking at the concept overview. Which reactive brain response do you default to most? Does it change depending on who you're talking to? And then get a conversation about that. And then what does it feel like in your body when your reactive brain kicks in? And then there's a third question. And then once people learn to basically recognize it, you're going to dive deeper into it, understanding exactly what happens. So these are questions like, why do you think certain people or topics trigger your reactive brain more than others? Or what makes it hard to stay in thinking brain mode even when you know that's where you want to be? And then once people kind of understand it in depth, then you're going to lead into questions to have people try some of the techniques. So in this case, this is where it gets practical. And you're going to lead in questions such as thinking about your life right now, work, home, school, wherever. Where is a conversation coming up that might trigger your reactive brain? And then knowing what you know now about the two modes, what's one small thing you could try differently next time you feel yourself reacting? And then finally, what would it look like if you gave yourself permission to pause before responding, even for 5 seconds? And so you get the conversation going about recognizing it, diving deeper, and then what people are going to try, and then you have a closing script, and that's basically your entire role in running these conversations. So that's the first one, why we react. And let me come off and stop sharing for a minute. Okay. And then the second conversation piece is, what is your conflict style? Now, when we have disagreements, most of us are really running on autopilot. Maybe we tell people what to do, or we give reasons why people should do something, or why we're right, or why they're wrong, or maybe we reward or we punish. Sometimes a potential conflict comes up, and we avoid it, right? Many of us, because if you're coming from education, many of us in education were pleasers, right? So we find ways to accommodate, or we try to negotiate, which sometimes it feels like we're the only ones negotiating, and every time we propose something, the other side asks for more. Each of us defaults to one or two styles, but there's actually five different styles of handling conflict. There's competing, avoiding, accommodating, compromising, or collaborating. And so this guide helps people understand what those five different styles do, which ones are better for which types of situations, where they're productive and where they're unproductive. So discussing these styles will allow individuals or teams or organizations or even classrooms to identify their defaults and understand the hidden costs of just running on autopilot. Like perhaps, by demanding things, or by trying to out reason people, or by using our power, maybe we're building resentment or damaging relationships. And then we learn how to deliberately match our style to how other people are reacting to the situation, rather than just defaulting to what's comfortable and what we've always done before. So let me go through and I'm gonna show that conversations piece as well. And then this is, what's your conflict style? And so when we move over to what's your conflict style, again, you have the cover, you have what's your conflict style for the instructions for the conversation host. Um, you have, and I'll expand this so at least you can see part of it. You expand this to what to do before the conversation. You have the timing. Okay. You have what could go wrong. Like if somebody gets emotional, it says let them. A simple thank you for sharing that goes a long way. Don't rush to fix, or to move on. um, or if you don't know the answer to something, what to do there. And then I'm going to go past the conversation itself to what to print for the participants. Okay, so there's a guideline for the participants, that you can start off discussing, and people can have in advance. And then the takeaways, and things that people can notice that week. So those are the 2 pages to print out for the people so that they can have a background. And then you're going to lead your questions, right? So you start off with an icebreaker. Like maybe you ask, without overthinking it, which of the five styles do you think is your default? Or maybe ask the group, think of one specific person in your life who brings out your worst conflict style. You don't have to name them, just tell us the relationship, um, and what their conflict style is, and how that triggers you. Or maybe ask the group, think of two conflicts you've been in, one where you handled it well and one where you didn't. What did you do differently? And personally, I love option B. Not that I dislike it, any of them, but this think of one specific person in your life who brings out your worst conflict style. Um, and I'm thinking picking one person for me is a little hard right now because I can think of about four, but if pressed, I could probably come up with one. Uh, Anyhow, so you have the icebreakers. You might go over the printout, and then you have the three phases of the conversation. One, how do you help people recognize those different styles? Like, which of the five styles do you think you use most, and does it change depending on who you're with, like your boss versus your partner versus your kids? And then questions to dive deeper and understand it, like what's the upside of your default style? What does it protect for you? And then what does it cost you over time to use that default style? And then things to try, which is the third phase, which is think of a disagreement that's happening in your life right now or one that's likely coming up soon. Which style would actually serve you best in that situation and why? And then would it feel uh, what would it feel like to try a style you don't normally use? What's the hardest part about that? And have people talk about that. And then and then you're closing. So those are that's a walkthrough of the two conversation circles that we're making available right now. This is the QR code to get the why we react that you can use to discuss. Oops, I'm sorry. What I meant to do. Let me quick get the other QR code up there. Here is the QR code for the five conflict styles. So if you wanted to download that conversation starter, you could, you can download it and start leading discussions. The next one that we're going to be making available is why buy-in drives action, how to inspire commitment. This conversation guide will be exploring different methods of listening and communicating that build toward committed action instead of building towards disruption and anger. Um, and then one of the things that I've done, and let me stop the display. Okay, um, is that I've gone back and conversations that I've had with other people. There's one conversation that we had with elementary teachers using these guides, and this one teacher, the way she described it is she always felt the urge to jump in defensively and fix resistance when colleagues dismissed new instructional strategies or interrupted during staff meetings. And her initial reactions were driven by frustration rather than careful consideration. And this is how she said what changed after having these conversations. She learned to pause and listen, using reflective listening to validate her colleagues' expertise and help them identify manageable next steps without applying pressure. Reflecting on her professional growth, she shared, this has helped me understand the importance of leading with empathy rather than solutions. Approaching conversations this way will help strengthen trust, improve follow through, and build a more positive, supportive professional relationship over time. And then in another group, there's, a guide, teachers, guidance counselors, parents were all participating. And this is a guidance counselor. And what she reported was that before having the conversations, she's naturally conflict avoidant. She preferred to keep quiet unless a fight was truly worth it or she was backed into a corner. This avoidance made it difficult to guide stubborn students who were setting unrealistic academic goals without sparking a conflict or simply telling them what to do. After having the conversations, She used motivational interviewing to validate students' feelings and gently redirect them with simple choices, allowing them to self reflect and realize on their own that an honors class was a better fit than an AP class. She was highly impressed by the techniques, and she stated, I really like the idea of a motivational interview style conversation. Using AI to write a script at the beginning of this form really highlighted for me how powerful and really easy this type of conversation can flow. So you can see that the effect of having these conversations have on people. Just imagine if our leaders, instead of automatically going to war, or or sending police forces into cities, imagine that they had the skills to be able to solve conflicts in ways that move all of us forward rather than divide us. Wouldn't that be an amazing gift? Well, we can do that ourselves by having these conversations with the people who surround us, and by getting this going, maybe we can spark this in the near future in our leaders as well. So these guides are designed to give you everything you need to break through many of the issues holding your groups back. Remember, just anyone can do this. Educators, team leads, HR professionals, parents, friends. If you can gather a few people and ask a question, you can host. So I want to thank you, for joining me on Mind Shifting Monday with Mitch. I'd like to encourage you to grab these guides. Again, they're free. They will always be free. Start some of these conversations that matter. Next week, we're going to have Josh Chernikov back, and he and I are going to discuss, and hopefully some of you can join the discussion, why everyone in schools is seems so angry right now. And if you have any thoughts on this, please weigh in. You can, contact me on LinkedIn or Substack, and you can join us and contribute in the chat. So until next week, this is Mitch Weisberg signing off for Mind Shifting Monday with Mitch, and hope to see